The Pathfinder 2e Barbarian is the end-all, be-all, big hitter of the game. No character in the game, at least in martial classes, is going to hit for nearly as much damage in a single hit than the Barbarian. And with Player Core 2 having just released, the Barbarian's Remaster is here in our hands. Welcome to my Pathfinder 2e deep dive into the Barbarian Class Remaster. The Barbarian is a strength-based class who gets 12 hit points per level, plus Constitution modifier, the highest amount of hit points in the game. When it comes to just being able to tank raw, unmitigated damage, the Barbarian is the king, along with getting more abilities as they level up to reduce incoming damage along with their massive hit point pool. They begin expert proficiency in perception, fortitude saves, and will saves, and they only begin trained in reflex, an amazing array of starting proficiencies right off the bat. They are, of course, trained in athletics automatically, and 3 plus their intelligence modifier in skill proficiencies. This is more than you might expect from something like a Barbarian who's not inherently thought of as a skillful class, and 3 is not a lot, but you put 1 or 2 boosts into intelligence to be a big brain bonky boy, and you can have a really wide variety of skills you can use in roleplay situations. Or if you're just looking for combat numbers advantages, getting athletics and then 3 skill proficiencies to spend on things like intimidation and deception can go a long way in improving your combat capabilities with your skills. Barbarians are trained in simple weapons, martial weapons, light armor, and medium armor, and you don't want to wear anything higher than medium armor for reasons we'll get into in just a minute. They're also, of course, trained in their Barbarian Class DC. Like all classes, Barbarians get to add +1 to any 4 ability scores of their choice. Remember, if you are making a new level 1 character, you get 4 additional boosts to add on top of your ancestry, class, and background. The Barbarian's Rage ability is their quintessential classic, and it is as reliable as ever. For 1 action, as long as you are not fatigued, you can enter a rage, granting yourself temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier, and upgrading all of your melee attacks to deal 2 bonus damage, or half that bonus damage if they are agile. Additionally, while raging, you cannot take any action with the Concentrate trait, which is still really hard to say this many years later, which means you cannot cast spells while raging unless you have a special feat or something that gets around it. The only action you're allowed to take while raging with the Concentrate trait is Seek. Your rage by default lasts for 1 minute, and it will end automatically at the end of that 1 minute, or if you are knocked unconscious, or if the encounter ends. You cannot voluntarily end your rage. There's not a whole lot of reasons you'd need to, unless you had a spell you absolutely needed to cast, but as long as you are still in an encounter, your rage will go until one of those criteria is met. And when you do stop raging, you lose any temporary hit points gained from raging. A very interesting change here in the remaster is that even once your rage ends, you can immediately rage again. You do not become fatigued. The only caveat now is that if you do rage again, you don't gain the temporary hit points. You have to wait a full minute to gain them again. New to the Pathfinder Remaster is the Quick Tempered ability that all Barbarians get right at first level. For a 3 action, as long as you are not wearing heavy armor, when you roll initiative, you can rage right off the bat. The battle starts, you are raging. This is incredible. This used to, I think, be a higher level feat that is now a base class feature, and it's not the only base class feature we're gonna see Barbarians get that's giving them some love. At first level, all Barbarians pick their Instinct. This is your subclass of choice, and it comes with a plethora of different benefits. You get your Instinct ability right at level 1, you get your Specialization ability at character level 7, and then your Raging Resistance at level 9, all based on the subclass you choose. So let's strap in and go over all of the available Barbarian Instincts in Player Core 2. Starting off with what is probably a fan favorite, the Animal Instinct Barbarian. The Barbarian that, whenever they're raging, they shapeshift part of their body into their animal of choice, gaining a unique unarmed strike of that animal. While raging in this way, the Barbarian is not able to use weapons at all, even if they want to, and your rage gains the Morph and Primal traits. All of the available transformations and their associated unarmed strikes are listed on this table right here. You pick one when you make a level 1 barbarian, and that is your animal of choice. You cannot change this as it is intrinsic to their character and identity as an animal instinct barbarian. Once you hit level 7, not only does your rage damage increase from +2 to a flat +5 on all of your melee strikes, but the damage die of all of your animal instincts unarmed strikes go up a die size. So if you have a 1d10 unarmed strike when you're shapeshifted into a bear, that becomes a d12 on top of all the different striking runes you may have on there. So by level 7, you're looking at about 2d12 +5 plus strength on a bear animal instinct barbarian unarmed attack. Incredible. Also listed under this feature is that once you hit level 15 and gain greater weapon specialization, the bonus flat damage from your animal instinct rage increases from +5 to +12 to all of your melee strikes. Just a flat 12 bonus damage on every attack. And finally, at level 9, their Raging Resistance resists piercing and slashing damage, reducing it by a certain amount, which we will go over that amount when we cover the class feature after the instincts. The Dragon Instinct Barbarian, the barbarian who harnesses the elemental power of dragons both in their melee strikes and occasionally by breathing the breath weapon itself or even transforming into a dragon. Not only do they start with 4 bonus damage to their strikes from rage instead of the base 2, but that bonus damage becomes the element associated with the dragon you pick at level 1. If you pick a horned Dragon Instinct Barbarian, then you will be dealing 4 bonus poison damage on all of your melee strikes, meaning you are already diversifying your damage. If you have a sword, you're dealing slashing damage with the sword plus 4 poison with your Dragon Instinct rage damage. And by the way, to clarify, this is optional. You do not need to increase and change the damage type. If you want to, as a Dragon Instinct Barbarian, while raging, you can just take the flat +2. If you are a green Dragon Instinct Barbarian fighting something immune to poison, you can just forego the bonus 2 damage and conversion to poison and just take the flat +2 rage damage. It's incredibly versatile and phenomenal. At 7th level, the bonus damage increases from 4 to 8, and at 15th level, it increases again from 8 to 16 bonus damage of your dragon's breath type on all melee strikes. Their Raging Resistance at 9th level is against piercing and the same damage type as your dragon's breath. The Fury Instinct is for barbarians who are just powered by their own anger and thirst for battle. Your damage from rage is increased instead of +2 to +3. You also gain an extra 1st level barbarian feat right at level 1. Upon reaching level 7, your damage from rage increases to +7, and then at level 15 it increases to +13 flat damage to all of your melee strikes. Their Raging Resistance is incredibly powerful though at 9th level, where they resist all physical weapon damage. However, it does not reduce other physical damage sources such as unarmed strikes. It is only against weapons. The Fury Instinct is the most simple out of all of them, but if you're looking to make a barbarian who is just angry all the time, it's a good choice. The Giant Instinct Barbarian is another huge fan favorite as it is capable of dealing out the biggest single damage melee hits in the game. The Giant Instinct Barbarian lets you wield any weapon designed for a creature of one size category larger than you. If you're small or medium, you can use a large creature's weapon, or if you're tiny, you can use a small creature's weapon as though it were normal. You also get one for free right at 1st level. This weapon does need to be common and cost no more than 9 gold pieces. If you're wielding this large weapon while raging, instead of getting +2 damage, you get a flat +6 damage to all melee strikes at level 1. However, this incredible damage comes with a pretty big downside. You are permanently clumsy 1 as long as you are wielding this weapon, which means anything related to dexterity goes down by 1, including but not limited to armor class, acrobatics checks, stealth checks, thievery checks, and probably most importantly, reflex saves. All of these are going to be at a penalty of -1 as long as you are raging while wielding this giant weapon. At level 7, your bonus rage damage increases to +10, and at level 15 it increases all the way to +18 damage to all melee strikes. Their raging resistance applies to bludgeoning, and then your choice of either electricity, cold, or fire damage, which you don't have to pick until you take the class feature at 9th level. The Spirit Instinct Barbarian is a barbarian who specifically attacks the souls of their targets. You may break their bones, but you'll also break their spirits. When you do rage, you have an option to increase your rage damage from 2 to 3, and if you do so, you change the rage bonus's damage type to spirit damage. If you're unaware, this is a new damage type in the Pathfinder Remaster. Spirit damage does not harm a corporeal form, however, it does harm the soul of a creature, or alternatively, it can harm anything possessing a creature. But keep in mind, only your bonus rage damage is converted to spirit, so if you hit a civilian who's possessed with a 2d12 Great Axe plus 3 spirit damage, you might deal 3 damage to the thing possessing the civilian, but you're still dealing 2d12 plus strength to their bones. However, if you do deal this spirit damage, your weapon is automatically considered to have the Ghost Touch rune, which I'll put on screen right now. It's phenomenal. A lot of creatures have an inherent weakness to Ghost Touch, and having that intrinsically part of your kit without taking up a rune slot on your weapon is great. Your rage action also gains the Divine and Spirit traits while raging this way. At level 7, your bonus rage damage increases from 3 to 7, and then again at level 15, it increases from 7 to 13 bonus damage on all melee strikes. The Spirit Instinct's raging resistance is super unique, as you gain your resistance against void damage and, quote, any damage dealt by the attacks and abilities of undead creatures, regardless of the damage type. You are just resilient against all non-living damage, and that's amazing. And finally, we have the Superstition Instinct Barbarian, which has seen a major update since its original inception. The Superstition Barbarian is incredibly anti-magic. In fact, it is completely anathema, a word we have not seen much on the Barbarian in the remaster. It is anathema for them to cast a spell or use any object that would allow them to cast a spell, like a wand or a scroll. Even holding those items voluntarily is anathema to them, and if they do so, they will lose access to all of their instincts' powers until they recenter themselves and say, I hate magic 32 times in front of a mirror. This process takes one full in-game day of downtime. A notable update to this is that you are now allowed to have your allies cast magic on you without it causing you to lose your abilities. In the original version of this, anybody who cast magic on you, even against your will, would break your anathema if you continued to travel with them. So if your cleric healed you and you said no and they healed you again, your choices were leave the party or lose your class abilities. But now the only anathema is you yourself using magic. But with this huge anathema comes a huge benefit. While raging, you gain a +2 status bonus to all saving throws against all magical effects, which is crazy. Anytime somebody casts a spell on you that calls for a saving throw of any kind, you're just getting a flat +2. It's like your proficiency is a full level higher against magic. Additionally, your rage damage is +3 instead of +2. Or if you have witnessed a creature casting a spell within the last hour, it gets upgraded to 4 bonus damage. Just seeing somebody use magic gives you enough motivation to punch them in the face even harder. Also, every 10 minutes when you rage, along with getting the temporary hit points from raging, you regain just as many hit points. Meaning, if you get 4 temporary hit points, you also heal 4 when you rage. Great when you're going into a fresh encounter, as long as it's been more than 10 minutes since your last one. And something they have added to the Superstition Instinct Barbarian to keep the flavor without debilitating it is that while you are raging, if you willingly accept the effect of any kind of spell, you become Frightened 1. If this is just something like a heal spell, Frightened will go down at the end of your next turn as normal with the condition. But if it's an extended effect, like Bless or Heroism, you are going to be Frightened 1 until the effect ends, which is brutal and makes buffing a Superstition Instinct Barbarian very difficult and almost not worth it. But it's okay, because their passive bonus to saving throws is insane. At level 7, your bonus rage damage increases from 3 to 7, or 8 if you've seen a creature cast a spell within the last hour, and then at level 15, it increases to 13 bonus damage, or 16 damage if you've seen them cast a spell. And their raging resistance is also super creative. You pick 2 of the 4 traditions of magic: Arcane, Divine, Occult, and Primal. You just gain your raging resistance, damage resistance, against any spell effect from those 2 picked traditions of magic, regardless of what kind of damage they deal. Keep in mind, it does depend on the caster casting the spell. For example, if somebody casts Harm on you, but you are only resistant to Divine, not Primal, but it's a primal caster, you don't get your damage resistance because it was cast as a primal spell, even though it is also on the divine spell list. I hope that makes sense. Now, with all the subclasses out of the way, let's move on to the class features, everything you're gonna get automatically from levels 2 through 20, regardless of what kind of barbarian you're playing as, starting with skill feats. Everybody gets skill feats. No, the first interesting thing that comes from Barbarians is their 3rd level class feature, which is new to the remaster. Furious Footfalls. You permanently gain a 5-foot status bonus to your speed, and while raging, it increases to 10. Just forever. Barbarians are just fast now, which is great because barbarians just want to get in there and hit stuff, and now they're even better at getting in there. They get general feats, they get skill increases, nothing you don't see on any other class, but then at level 5, they get ancestry feats and brutality. This increases their proficiency with simple and martial weapons to expert, and while raging, they gain the critical specialization effect of any weapon they're using, as long as they're proficient in it. Phenomenal. When a barbarian hits level 7, they become incredibly resilient thanks to Juggernaut. Not only do their fortitude saves increase to master, but now, if they ever normal succeed a saving throw against a fortitude save, they critically succeed automatically. So not only are fortitude saves your highest bonus probably on almost your entire character sheet, but you also auto-crit succeed even if you meet the DC of an effect. Phenomenal. Weapon specialization at 7th level just increases your flat damage with all weapons. If you're an expert with the weapon, you deal 2 bonus damage, 3 if you're master, 4 if you're legendary. And yes, this does stack with your rage bonus damage because this is untyped. Barbarians hit hard, y'all. You also gain your instinct specialization abilities, which we just covered in the last chapter. Also at level 9, Raging Resistance. While raging, you just gain flat damage resistance equal to 3 plus your Constitution modifier against damage types of your specialization. For example, if you are a Fury Instinct Barbarian and someone hits you with a physical weapon, you just take 7 less damage, assuming you have a +4 to Constitution. That's gross and really, really good. You can really look at this as just 7 reduced damage from specific damage types forever passively, while raging at least. It's great. At 9th level, reflex saves finally increase to expert, and then at level 11, they get Mighty Rage. Mighty Rage is another phenomenal addition to the Barbarian Remaster. Not only does your Barbarian class DC increase to expert, nobody cares about that, but when you use Quick Tempered to rage when you roll initiative, your first melee attack of that round deals bonus damage equal to your rage bonus damage. If you are a Giant Instinct Barbarian, then all of a sudden your first attack is doing what? 10 more damage? This is crazy. Especially at higher levels, once you're level 15 and you get your max rage bonus damage, you just get to double that on your first attack of every single fight. It's fantastic and I love it. It's so thematic. If you can critically hit your Mighty Rage infused first attack, we will see numbers that I don't think we've ever seen before in Pathfinder 2e. This is the new way to get the highest single damage attack in the entire game. At level 13, Barbarians get Greater Juggernaut, increasing their fortitude saves to legendary. On top of that, if you ever roll a failure against a damaging effect fortitude save, you take half damage. And if you would ever somehow nat 1 and critically fail a fortitude save effect, it just becomes a normal failure instead, meaning you will no longer ever take double damage or the crit fail effects from a fortitude save ever again. At level 13, the Barbarian gets expert proficiency in their armors and master proficiency in their weapons. At level 15, they get greater weapon specialization, doubling the bonus damage from weapon specialization and also upgrading their rage bonus damage from their instinct, meaning level 15 is when Barbarians start to chunk. Seriously, I just did the math. A giant instinct barbarian attacking with their mighty rage first attack of the combat gets a bonus 42 damage before adding strength or any damage die. You will never hit for less than 42 as a giant instinct barbarian on your first attack at level 15. Level 17 sees them gaining master proficiency in perception, and then a really interesting take on revitalizing rage. Instead of having to wait a full minute between rages to gain your temporary hit points again, now you can gain them as long as you spend one round not raging. And finally, at level 19, Barbarians gain master proficiency in their armors and the Devastator class ability. This increases their Barbarian class DC to master proficiency, and more importantly, allows all of your melee strikes to ignore 10 physical damage resistance of any target you're attacking forever, passively, not even while raging, just ignore up to 10 resistance to the physical damage they deal. Pretty fantastic. And there you have all of the intrinsic class features and subclasses of the Barbarian, which means it's time to move on to the last chapter. Small chapter, really. Shouldn't take more than 3 or 4 minutes. Every single feat available to Barbarians in Player Core 2. Let's get into it. These feats start off incredibly complicated with acute vision. While raging, you have dark vision. I know, I'll try to slow down, it's complicated. Adrenaline Rush grants you a +1 status bonus while raging to all escape, force open, and athletics checks to lift heavy objects, as well as increasing your bulk limit so it's harder to be encumbered. I just like the visual of this, that if you need to carry something heavy and get out of the room, the Barbarian can literally rage to lift things that they shouldn't be able to. That's just like so flavorful for the character. Draconic Arrogance specifically for the Dragon Instinct Barbarian. While raging, you get a +2 to all saving throws against emotion effects. Just a nice little passive forever bonus. Moment of Clarity. For one action, for the rest of this turn, you can use actions with the Concentrate trait while raging. This is fine. This is a feat I was hoping would get upgraded in the remaster, but unfortunately it's just fine. Basically, if you're raging and you have access to a spell of some kind and you want to cast it, it makes a 2-action spell cost 3 actions, 1 for Moment of Clarity, and then the 2 actions for the spell. Raging Intimidation allows you to use some Intimidation skill actions which have the Concentrate trait while raging, and these include Demoralize and Scare to Death. On top of that, it also automatically gives you the skill feats Intimidating Glare and Scare to Death the very moment you meet the prerequisites without having to spend a feat to gain them. Pretty decent overall. It's a feat that gets you more feats and some bonuses. Not too bad. Raging Thrower allows you to add your rage damage to all thrown weapon attacks. Your full Giant Instinct +18 rage damage to your thrown weapon attacks. We love to see it. Additionally, if you have the Brutal Critical feat or the Devastator class feature, those also apply to thrown weapon attacks. And finally, there's the classic Sudden Charge. 2 actions, stride twice, and melee attack. It's just great action economy, 3 actions for 2, how can you go wrong? It's important to mention that this doesn't have the rage trait either. You can sudden charge whenever you want, and now that you can quick tempered rage as a free action, this means that on the first turn of combat, the Barbarian can technically stride 3 times and strike and rage all on their first turn of combat. Barbarians want to get in and finish things fast, and that's great. The downside I do see here right now in the remaster is they didn't fix the Fury Instinct Barbarian's biggest problem, namely not having enough first level feats to warrant taking that as your entire instinct. I get taking Fury Instinct as a character choice and a flavor choice, but I was hoping they'd add at least 1 or 2 new first level feats to give them a bonus option. After all, Fury Instinct Barbarians now gain 2 first level feats. They always have, but you only have like 5 options. And they're not great. Second level feats, starting with Acute Sense. While you're raging, you got a big ol' sniffer. You get an imprecise scent. Sense up to 30 feet. Bashing Charge. You do need to be trained in athletics, which you're a barbarian. You automatically are. For 2 actions, you get to stride twice. And once during this movement, if you would move through a door or window or wall or something else, say, breakable, you can roll athletics to force open with a +1 status bonus, and if you succeed, you just keep going. Not only does the object just break down in front of you, but you get to finish your movement. However, if you do fail the athletics check, your movement stops right in front of the object, even if you haven't moved that far. Furious Finish is so funny to me now that we have Mighty Rage at level 11. For 1 action, you make a melee strike and deal bonus damage equal to the number of rounds left in your rage. Meaning if you use this on turn 1 with Mighty Rage, you get 10 bonus damage. And you also can get 10 bonus damage at level 2. The downside is that if you end your rage in this way, because your rage ends immediately after making this strike, you do become fatigued, which gives you a -1 status penalty to armor class and saving throws until you rest for 10 minutes. And because you're fatigued, you cannot rage again. So if you're gonna use Furious Finish, make sure it's the end of an encounter when you do. Intimidating Strike, as useful as ever. For 2 actions, make a melee strike. If you hit and deal damage, they're frightened 1. If you crit, frightened 2. No saving throw, it just works. Next feat. No escape. If an enemy takes a move action to move away from you in any direction, then as a reaction, you can stride up to your speed to keep up with them. And remember, at 3rd level, you gain a 5-foot speed bonus. And while raging, it's +10. This is a really good feat. Just keep in mind you can only use this while raging, so if you're not raging at the moment, you cannot follow them. Second Wind, possibly one of the most underwhelming feats I've seen in a long time. You can rage again after your rage ends, like normal. And if you do, you get the 4 temporary hit points again. Or temporary hit points equal to your con modifier, which might be less than 4. And then when this rage ends, you're fatigued for 10 minutes. Is it really worth fatiguing yourself for 3 or 4 temporary hit points? And a feat. Especially once you get Revitalizing Rage, this isn't that useful, which you can always retrain out of it, but I do not think a feat is worth 3 temporary hit points. Just a personal take. It's level plus Constitution modifier. It's not just con mod, it's level plus con. I still don't think it saves the feat. Let's be real, you're looking at a full feat at level 2 for 5 temporary hit points an extra time per combat, and only if your rage ends during the combat. I still don't think it's that good, but it is better than I thought. Shake It Off is phenomenal. For 1 action while raging, you can just reduce your frightened condition by 1 and attempt a fortitude save to reduce sickened, reducing it by 1 on a failed save, 2 on a success, and 3 on a crit success. This is incredible. The fact that it gets rid of both conditions and gets rid of sickened on a failed save is wonderful. This is a feat that got even better in the remaster. Barreling Charge is not all that useful in my opinion. For 3 actions, you stride once and make a melee strike. The upside is you can move through enemies' spaces during this stride, provided you make a successful athletics skill check against their fortitude DC. Or you can sudden charge and go around them. I feel like this would be worth it if maybe you got to shove everybody you successfully moved through, so moving them 5 or 10 feet out of the way. This would be a really cool way to cause a lot of disruption among close enemy ranks. But the fact of the matter is, this is 3 actions to stride once through an enemy and make a melee strike. I think this either should have had like the shove edition or make it just 2 actions instead. Oversized Throw is fun. As long as you have a free hand, for 2 actions you can grab something nearby that is either your size or 1 size category smaller. You can throw it 20 feet range increments, meaning every 20 feet past the initial 20 feet gives it a -2 to the attack roll, and if it hits, it deals 1d10 bludgeoning damage both to the target and itself, and because it has the thrown trait, this does get to add your whole strength modifier. When you get weapon specialization and greater weapon specialization, this does increase to 2d10 and 3d10 respectively, and because they're weapons, it applies your weapon specialization and rage damage too. Raging Thrower Oversized Throw is awesome. So if you want to make a Giant Instinct Barbarian with Raging Thrower and Oversized Throw getting crazy bonus damage from throwing bar stools and rocks at people, please do. You have my blessing, and I want to hear about it when you do. Raging Athlete paints a terrifying visual that I love. You do need to be an expert in athletics to take this feat, but while raging with this feat, you gain a climb and swim speed equal to your normal speed. And remember, we already got Furious Footfalls at 3rd level, meaning you probably have a raging speed of 35 feet, meaning you can climb 35 feet in 2 seconds! I want you to imagine just the Goblin Barbarian, who you look down the wall and go, okay, this is a 100-foot wall. We're safe up here. And then initiative is rolled, the goblin quick-tempered rages, and then in 3 actions, in 6 seconds, just hoists itself up that wall and is in your face. Round 1. I love this feat. And it's not done. Not only do you gain a 5-foot bonus to your vertical leap, and that's not to be confused with a high jump. This is just a 1-action boing, where you can now jump about 8 feet in the air with no setup. You can also just leap 20 feet across, not with an athletics check long jump, but just you're standing here, just push off 20-foot jump. This feat is crazy, and I love it. Athletics needed some help, and this is some good athletics help. Scars of Steel, specifically for the Fury Instinct, the first thing we've seen that will help the Fury Instinct stand out. It's only once per day, but let's see how worth it is. As a reaction, if you would be critically hit by a physical damage attack, you can reduce the damage by your con mod plus half your level. Fury Instinct. Why does Paizo hate you? At level 4, this is going to be 5 damage resistance once per day? It can't even be your full level? It won't even stack with raging resistance, because resistance doesn't stack. It just gives you the highest applicable resistance. So at like level 9, this is still only going to be worth maybe 8 damage reduction? Fury Instinct. I don't know who at Paizo just despises you, but I'm sorry. I love you, Fury. I want you to work. Especially the fact that it's only once per day, not even whenever you're critically hit, just once per day, reduced damage taken by like 7 or 8 on a critical hit. Makes me sad. Spiritual Guides is a little bit more useful for the Spirit Instinct. Once per day as a reaction, if you critically fail a perception check or skill check, you can re-roll it. This is like a hero point in the form of a once per day feat, which is kind of cool. Not game-breaking or crazy by any means, but really neat. Supernatural Senses is really cool. You do need to have an inherent scent sense in your character or have taken the Acute Scent feat. That was a really hard sentence. But this effectively reduces the required DCs to target concealed and hidden creatures by 2. Concealed creatures now just need a flat 3 or higher, and hidden creatures need a flat 9 or higher to target them successfully. This is nice because when it comes down to it, concealed especially comes up a lot, and I've seen a lot of missed attacks because of concealment and blindness and invisibility and all that jazz. Comes up a lot more often than you might think. Swipe. What's there to say about Swipe? 2 actions, make 1 attack roll against 2 adjacent targets and apply it to both of them. Normal multiple attack penalty applies after the attack. You can look at this as 2 actions, make 2 attacks at your full bonus as long as the targets are adjacent, and if your weapon happens to have the Sweep trait, which adds bonus damage on second attacks as long as they're adjacent to the target, you get to apply it to both of these attacks, which is a sweet little bonus. Swipe has and always will be a super reliable ability on Barbarians. Oh my god, does that stack with Mighty Rage? It does. That's a single melee strike. A Giant Instinct Barbarian with Mighty Rage and Greater Weapon Specialization at level 15 can roll once and attack both targets for a guaranteed 42 damage to each before any dice. That's 84 guaranteed damage. I like this game. Wounded Rage, which is a lot more useless now that Quick Tempered exists, but as a reaction, if you take damage, you rage. This is really only useful if the fight's gone on long enough that your rage wore off, or maybe you got knocked out and then brought back up, and then you take damage before your turn starts, so you use your reaction to rage. It's too situational for me, I don't recommend it. 6th level Animal Skin, still just a fantastic feat. Not only does your unarmored defense proficiency increase to Expert just from taking this feat, but you gain an inherent item bonus to your armor while wearing no armor. While unarmored, you just get a flat +2 item bonus and a +3 dexterity cap, and this stacks with item bonuses like Runes of Armor Potency. This is crazy, meaning that around this level you can get +1 to armor class, and if you've got a +3 to dexterity, at level 6 you're looking at a 26 armor class on a barbarian? Granted, this is only for the animal instinct, so it's a very specific build, but 26 armor class at level 6 on an unarmored barbarian is crazy. Oh, and by the way, that +2 item bonus increases to +3 when you get the Greater Juggernaut class feature. I love the Barbarian in Pathfinder 2e, and they've somehow made it cooler. I love this feat. This feat might even be the exact same it was in the original. I just love this so much. Brutal Bully. If you're a barbarian who's using athletics to do a bunch of athletics things, you might as well take this feat, because whenever you successfully shove, disarm, trip, reposition any of the athletic skill actions, if you succeed, you deal them damage equal to your strength modifier, and this does stack with the damage a target takes from critically failing on a trip check. It's just a fun little way to sneak in like 4 extra damage from time to time. Nothing crazy, but fun. Would it be overpowered if that said add your rage damage? I wonder. Because that'd be fun. A giant instinct barbarian who just deals like 10 damage by pushing you. They're just literally the bully. Just like, hey, what are you doing? 10 damage. Cleave. Not as good as Swipe in my opinion, but not bad by any means. As a reaction, if you drop an enemy to 0 hit points, you can use your reaction to make another strike against an adjacent enemy. It still uses your multiple attack penalties, so a bonus strike action isn't that helpful, but it's not useless. And then the Dragon Instinct Barbarian gets Dragon's Rage Breath. For 2 actions every 10 minutes, you breathe out a cone of 1d6 damage per character level against everything in a 30-foot cone in front of you. This is a basic reflex save against your class DC and deals the same damage type as your chosen dragon, obviously. This is just a huge little nuke. At level 6, this does 6d6 damage. This damage is going to scale about the same as a wizard's fireball, maybe a little bit weaker. But the fact that it goes up by 1d6 every character level means it is always going to be useful, and right when you grab it, 6d6 in an area, we love to see it. Giant Stature, a really cool visual effect feat for 1 action while raging as a giant instinct barbarian. You become large. Not just 1 size category bigger, but large. If you were tiny, you become large and gain a reach of 5 feet. But you do still have the clumsy 1 condition regardless of what weapon you are using. So overall, this is just 1 action while raging. Gain reach until you stop reaching. Reaching? Raging. Rage reach. Inner Strength for the Spirit Barbarian is a fascinating little feat. You can use your connection to the spirits to overcome any physical enfeeblement. For 1 action, reduce the enfeebled condition on you by 1. That's it. Not even counteract. If you're enfeebled 3, you can just do this 3 times. Reduce it by 1, reduce it by 1, reduce it by 1. That's great. Mage Hunter is alright for the Superstition Instinct. If you've seen a creature cast a spell, then you can use a 2-action melee strike on them, and if you hit, they're Stupefied 1, Stupefied 2 on a critical strike until the end of your next turn. This is alright. This gives any spells they cast an inherent chance to fizzle, DC 6 if they're Stupefied 1, DC 7 if they're Stupefied 2, that they have to just roll that check before trying to cast a spell. But overall, I don't see why this is 2 actions. It already has the requirement of seeing the target cast the spell. The Superstition Barbarian is already so anti-magic. This isn't adding any damage, this isn't buffing you in any way, and this is just giving them a chance to lose their spell. I think making this a 2-action strike was a little bit overkill and undertuned, so I'd rather it be 1 action, but it's still a fun, flavorful ability. But I'd rather have Reactive Strike. Nocturnal Senses feels weird to me. As a prerequisite, you do need to have low light vision or a scent sense, but you just get dark vision, just like acute senses did. But your sense increases to 60 feet instead of 30. I don't know. This weirdly doesn't feel as good. Yeah, I don't quite know why this feat exists. Acute sense is probably enough. This is just a feat that increases your scent range. Don't recommend it. Oh hey, reactive strike. It's a reactive strike. On the upside, if a creature used a manipulate action and you critically struck them with reactive strike, it does disrupt that action and they lose it entirely, which feels more flavorful to me as a superstition instinct than the Mage Hunter ability, because most spells have the somatic components, which have the manipulate trait, which means it triggers reactive strike, which means you hit them, and if you critically hit them, it stops their spell altogether. I don't know, feels more cool. I think I would have rather seen a version of this for Superstition Instinct Barbarians, maybe at level 8 or 10, that is a reaction that disrupts spells on a normal hit. That would have been awesome. Scouring Rage is cool, but I believe it can only be taken by Dragon Instinct and Spirit Instinct Barbarians, as the requirement is that your rage changes damage types. But when you rage, every enemy in a 20-foot emanation takes damage equal to your rage bonus damage, which at high levels is pretty decent. It's fun, it's a free action, it's going to happen automatically at the start of initiative, or this would actually give you a reason to wait until your turn so you can move into position, then rage and hit everybody around you for like 10 bonus damage. So it's fun, it's got some cool ideas to use with it. I don't think it's crazy, but for a level 6 feat, it's cool. The Spirit Instinct gets another 6th level feat with Spirit's Interference. For one action, you just cause yourself to be swarmed and concealed by spirits. And all ranged attacks targeting you until your rage ends need a DC 5 flat check to target you. That's it. That's amazing. It's just the concealed effect, but against all ranged attacks. That's wild. At level 8, Animal Instinct Barbarians gain Animalistic Brutality. For one action, your animal unarmed strike gains a new trait until you stop raging. I'll put the effects of all of these traits on screen rather than going over them verbally from memory, because I could not tell you what backswing does. I do know that parry functions like raising a shield but weaker, and that's kind of cool, that if you've got like deer antlers, you can position them in a defensive manner. I do love that. But I love that you can choose a different trait every single time you rage and use Animalistic Brutality. Really fun feat. Disarming Assault is okay. For one action, you make a melee strike. If you hit, you can make a disarm attempt. The problem is that a normal success disarm isn't all that powerful, and the disarm still has the attack trait. So you do get to do both of these for one action, but your disarm attempt is going to be at -5 because you already struck. It's good action economy, but I don't think it's that effective. You're not going to crit succeed with that disarm attempt. There's also Follow-Up Assault. If you just missed with an attack, then you can attack again, gaining the Forceful and Backswing traits on your attack. I know one of those traits gives you a +1 to hit on your next attack, so that's not bad. This is effectively a way to cheat Agile onto your attack as a Barbarian without sacrificing your rage damage, and that's not awful. It just sucks that you have to miss first to get it. Friendly Toss is amazing. It's just that one scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo tells Superman to throw him. But for two actions, as long as you have a free hand, you pick up an ally, throw them 30 feet. This does not trigger any reactions, and if they land next to an enemy, they can use their reaction to attack the enemy. I don't know why you wouldn't want to just, for two actions, walk 30 feet and attack them yourself. But I guess if the fighter needs help, you can chuck them across the gorge to attack the enemy. Or if the wizard is getting pummeled, you can pick them up and throw them 30 feet away from combat and say, hey, you're fighting me. So lots of cool uses for this. I love it. It's thematic. And who has not wanted to throw their party members effectively in a TTRPG campaign before? It's great. Furious Bully. You do need to be a master in athletics for this, but from now on, while raging, you just get a +2 circumstance bonus to all athletics checks with the attack trait. That's your disarm, your trip, your shove, your reposition, all of that. Phenomenal, and makes that feat I was talking about before a little bit better, where you can disarm after attacking because it gets a +2. The downside is they're the same level feat, so you probably won't take both. Now, Instinctive Strike is incredible. As long as you have an Imprecise Sense, I'm getting tired of saying that, or the Acute Sense feat, you just get to ignore any flat penalty regarding attacking a hidden or concealed opponent. The hidden one is amazing, because that's usually like a 50% flat mischance, and as long as you can smell them, you can just hit them. That's amazing! Now, it does say you need to be detecting them through scent, so chances are you're going to need to make a seek action first that turn to locate them, move to where they are, and then bash their brains in. Invulnerable Rager is a weird choice to be level 8. You become trained in heavy armor, and your Barbarian class features like quick-tempered that normally don't work with heavy armor suddenly do. Also, your heavy armor goes up in proficiency alongside the rest of your armor. Why is this level 8 though? I don't quite understand. The way Pathfinder 2e is balanced, you build your character around a certain armor type, meaning if you're gonna build a heavy armor barbarian, you'll want to build them that way from the start. Waiting till level 8 doesn't feel great. Renewed Vigor is a cute little tanky way to keep yourself going on the battlefield. For one action, while raging, you gain temporary hit points equal to half your level plus your constitution modifier. Or, if you attacked first this turn, you get temp hit points equal to your full level plus constitution modifier. That's not bad. At level 8, being able to just give yourself 12 or 13 temporary hit points? Not going to complain about that. This has no cooldown, by the way, so you can just do this every single round as long as you land a hit. You don't even need to land the hit, what am I saying? So every single turn, you're effectively quote-unquote healing yourself for 13, and this is going to go up more and more as you go up in level and your con mod goes up. As long as you attack once and use this action on every single turn, you're looking at renewable temporary hit points over and over. This is one of the best frontline face tank barbarian feats we've seen so far. Share Rage. While raging, you can pick an ally within 30 feet, and they gain the benefits of your rage. They don't get any of your instinct abilities, so it's just +2 damage to their melee strikes as long as they're not agile. So you can look at this as one action, give your ally +2 damage to melee strikes. The good news is this does last your entire rage, so you can look at this as spend an action, give the fighter +2 damage for the entire combat, and that's really, really cool to have the Barbarian have such a supportive ability. I like it. Sudden Leap. For 2 actions, make a high jump or long jump, and strike an opponent at any point during the jump. However, the moment you make the strike, you do fall directly downwards, so be wary of that. If you fight something over a gorge and try to long jump and hit it, you stop over the gorge and you're gonna fall. But especially with high jump and a great athletics proficiency, you can probably get a good 20 to 30 feet of air and strike something over and over again every round, even if it's flying out of reach. Not bad. Thrash is hilarious. For one action, if you have a creature grabbed or restrained, you can just deal damage equal to your strength mod, plus weapon specialization, plus rage damage. Giant Instinct Barbarians throttling people, yes please. They do get a basic fortitude save against your class DC, however, and your class DC, while it does scale off your strength, doesn't increase in proficiency very fast, so it's not going to be the hardest saving throw in the world. But this is just guaranteed damage as long as they don't crit succeed. Also, this has no cooldown, so you can do this 3 times in one turn if you already have them grabbed, or roll grab again to solidify it and do it twice. If you're level 8, Giant Instinct Barbarians can deal about 16 damage with this, by the way. So you can just go 16 damage, reaffirm the grab. That is a potentially guaranteed, on average, 40 plus damage a round, provided they fail most of their saves and don't crit fail or crit succeed anything. That's fun. The Giant Instinct Bully Thrash build might be my next Barbarian. Come and Get Me at level 10 is really interesting. For one action, you make yourself easier to hit and take more damage. You become off guard, reducing your armor class by 2, and all attacks against you get a +2 circumstance bonus to their damage rolls. In return, any creature that hits you is off guard against you until the end of your next turn. Meaning you make yourself easy to hit, but anybody who hits you becomes an easier target for you. And remember, -2 to armor class is also +2 chance to crit. On top of that, anytime you hit one of the creatures who hit you, you gain temporary hit points equal to your con modifier, double that if you critically hit. So that's like 4 or 5 temporary hit points, but I have a problem with this feat. It's called flanking. Flanking already puts creatures off guard, and flanking in Pathfinder 2e is not that hard to do, especially now that barbarians have an increased movement speed. So the fact that you or an ally can easily position themselves in such a way to make an enemy off guard makes come and get me really not worth it. Being able to lower your armor class and take bonus damage in exchange for off guard and a couple temporary hit points is not that worth it. Especially when we just talked about Renewed Vigor, where you can just give yourself a ton of temporary hit points every single turn without even needing to land a hit. This just doesn't feel that worth it, unfortunately. I'd pass on this one. Furious Sprint might be the single fastest turn you can take in the game, at least when it comes to speed and distance. For 2 actions, you stride 5 times. Or, for 3 actions, you stride 8 times. But it must all be in a straight line. And, if you ever would need to, you can make balance checks, but you can roll athletics instead of acrobatics. So if you're playing a raging barbarian who probably has a move speed of 35 feet, and you 3-action Furious Sprint, that's 280 feet of movement in 1 round. 6 seconds. How fast is that in miles per hour? Okay, so I was prepared to make this big joke like, oh my gosh, you're so fast, that's crazy. With Furious Sprint, that's so over the top. It's 31 miles per hour, which, don't get me wrong, is crazy. But Usain Bolt ran 28 miles an hour. So it's like, you're only a little faster than Usain Bolt as a level 10 barbarian. Like, damn. Great Cleave. Kind of a trap feat in my opinion. This is an upgrade to Cleave, where if you keep dropping enemies to 0 hit points on each of your attacks, you can keep making more and more and more attacks infinitely until you're out of enemies or you miss. The problem is that all of these use multiple attack penalties, so after that second swing, even if you did drop them to 0, you're swinging at -10. So the chance of you hitting and knocking something down to 0 with your 3rd or 4th or 5th attack, unless you're fighting tiny minions like 8 levels below you, I don't really see Great Cleave ever coming in handy that much. It's a cool idea to be able to just swing around you and kill like 7 enemies in 1 turn, but it just doesn't seem feasible, or like it would ever come up that often. I can't recommend Great Cleave. Impressive Landing is hilarious. As long as you fall at least 10 feet onto a solid surface, then as a reaction, you can, boom, land on the ground, send debris everywhere, and cushion your own fall. You treat the fall as 10 feet shorter than it actually was when it comes to taking damage and whatnot, and any creature within a 5-foot emanation of you just takes 5 bludgeoning damage as rocks hit them in the face, which is just really funny. But it does make them off guard to everything, so your spellcasters and your ranged attackers can really make use of this, and I believe it does count as falling if you jump more than 10 feet up, and then fall and reaction Impressive Landing. So this is a unique way to possibly throw a lot of enemies off guard. Just kind of fun. Knockback. For 1 action, if your last action was a successful melee attack, you can just push a target 5 feet. No saving throw. That's it. And like a normal shove, you can choose to step forward 5 feet and follow them. It's just a guaranteed normal shove success, and if you've got them on a ledge or in front of a trap or something, maybe this is useful. It gets away from having to use a second attack action is the main big benefit. Overpowering Charge, I think, is what Barreling Charge should have been as a base feat. As a reminder, Barreling Charge is 3 actions, stride through enemies. Make athletics checks to move through them against their fortitude DCs. The difference now is that with Overpowering Charge, any creature you successfully move through takes damage equal to your strength modifier, doubled on a critical success, and then only off guard on a critical success, which is just not that useful. Again, you're only striding once, so maybe you're moving through 3 targets, in which case you'll do about 15 damage. That's just not that worth it. This doesn't save barreling charge, and it's a second feat tax. Even if all of this was on OG barreling charge, I still don't think I'd take it. Resounding Blow is situational but fun. For 2 actions, if you have a weapon that deals bludgeoning damage, you attack a target, and if you hit them, they are deafened for 1 round, or 1 minute on a critical success. Deafened is a very situational condition. It just means they can't hear anything. They can still cast spells, they can still target their attacks. 9 times out of 10 in combat, deafening someone is not going to do much. So it's very situational. You'd have to have a very specific encounter to really make use of it, but it's a fun little flavor. Silencing Strike is what the Superstition Instinct Barbarian should have gotten instead of Mage Hunter. For 1 action, you make a melee strike. If you hit, the creature makes a Fortitude save against your class DC, and if they fail, they're stunned and can barely vocalize. First off, this stuns them 1, meaning on their next turn, they have 1 less action. If they're a spellcaster, most spells are 2 actions, so all they can do is cast 1 spell. On top of that, in order to cast a spell, I bit my lip so hard. Oh! I'm sorry, I'll stop making fun of the superstition. God. Yep, that's blood. Anyway, they have to succeed a flat DC 11 check to not only cast a spell, but use any linguistic action, like talking. Unless they've got a spell with a subtle trait that doesn't require them to use their voice, they have to make a flat DC 11, which is twice as good as Stupefied, which is what the Superstition Barbarian applies. Why isn't this the Superstition Barbarian feat? A few things to keep in mind with this feat. It does have Incapacitation, which the Mage Hunter feat did not. If you're unaware, Incapacitation means if the creature is higher level than you, it treats its saving throw as 1 higher automatically. Also worth keeping in mind is if you critically strike a target, their saving throw will be considered 1 less. So if you critically strike a creature who is the same level or lower than you and they normal succeed, they're getting the failure effect. Or if they fail, they get the critical failure effect, which skips their next turn. I would like to reiterate that. Skips their next turn with stunned 3. Moving on. Tangle of Battle sucks. I'm just gonna say it. This feat is awful. When you critically strike an adjacent enemy, you can spend your reaction to attempt to grapple them. So in order to save 1 action, you need to hit. The hit needs to be a critical, the enemy needs to be adjacent, so it doesn't even matter if you have reach, and you have to spend your reaction to attempt to grapple, which might fail, and because grapple has the attack action, it's gonna be at -5. This wouldn't be bad if it said the grapple ignored the multiple attack penalty. Then I'd be like, yeah, critical hit and reaction to ignore a -5? Yes, that's totally fine. But the fact that this is a level 10 feat with like 3 different hoops to jump through just to grab a creature, when you could just spend an extra action for the same effect? That's a horrible feat. And it has the rage trait. This feels like a level 1 feat. If this was level 1, I might give it a pass. But this is a level 10 feat that requires a critical hit on an adjacent enemy, spending your reaction, and making an athletics check at -5 to get any benefit out of it. Don't take this feat. Terrifying Howl. For 1 action, demoralize every enemy within 30 feet. And ignore the penalty if they don't share a language, because you're just screaming. This is really good. It'll basically level down all of the enemies who fail their save, letting your entire party capitalize on them. The downside is because it's demoralized, they're immune for a full minute afterwards, so you're only gonna really get to use this once per encounter, but boy is that 1 round gonna be fantastic for your party. Dragon Rage's Wings. For one action, you gain wings and a fly speed equal to your land speed for the rest of your rage. That's crazy, because that means your furious footfalls apply to this fly speed. So you're going to have a 35-foot fly speed for 9 rounds. That's crazy good. And it doesn't even matter if you forget when your rage runs out, because if your rage runs out in midair, it doesn't matter how far you fall, because your wings always last until the last second, meaning you take no fall damage. Embrace the Pain is not bad. As a reaction, if an adjacent creature damages you, you can attempt to grapple or disarm them. And because this is a reaction not on your turn, you get to ignore the multiple attack penalty. Isn't that nice? Yeah, this is just a great little free athletics check when it's not your turn with a really easy trigger of taking damage. This is fantastic. This is not. So, going into this next feat, I firmly believe Tangle of Battle was not supposed to be printed. Because the very next feat level at level 12, we get Furious Grab, which is one action. If your last action hit an enemy, grapple them as though you succeeded. Why would you ever take Tangle of Battle when you could wait 2 levels and then take the auto grab feat? I don't get it. This is just spend an extra action, automatically succeed as though you grappled them. I don't understand. This has to be a misprint. Like, legitimately, this cannot be what they meant if they were also releasing Furious Grab. I really don't get it. Predator's Pounce for the Animal Instinct is fine. It's one action for 2. Stride and make a melee strike against an adjacent opponent. That's it. It's just really good action economy. Unfortunately, it does have the Flourish trait, which means you can only use 1 Flourish per turn, so you can't Predator's Pounce and then Sudden Charge, because that would be a cool combo. Sadly, they are both Flourishes, but it does give you a lot of freedom to move, strike, and then Predator's Pounce somebody else if you killed your initial target. Really good. Spirit's Wrath for the Spirit Instinct Barbarian is super cool, flavorful, and really helpful for the Barbarian. This is effectively a one-action ranged attack with 120-foot range. It uses your martial weapon proficiency and gives a +2 item bonus for a 4d8 plus Constitution modifier attack. Now, it doesn't apply your rage damage or your weapon specialization damage, but 4d8 plus probably 4 or 5 is really, really good. Plus, on a critical hit, it just automatically makes the target frightened. If you're 120 feet away and know the enemies are going to come to you to get in melee, you can just hang back and Spirit's Wrath them until they decide to come to you. This gives your frontline Barbarian a ranged option, and that should not be understated. It does make sure to state that even though you are releasing a wisp that is technically doing the attacking, it still uses your multiple attack penalty. Sunder Spell is finally a great feat for the Superstition Instinct Barbarian. For 2 actions, you attack a creature, object, or even the manifestation of a spell like a Wall of Fire. When you hit the target, you get to counteract it using the result of your attack roll as your counteract check. But as long as you succeed the counteract check, you just turn it off. And the armor class of things like a Wall of Fire that aren't defensive or evasive is just 10, which means you're never going to miss it. This means you can just disable things like Walls of Fire. If a boss has a really powerful magical effect on them, you can just hit it and turn off their heroism or turn off their whatever bark skin's called nowadays. This is a really, really cool feat, and I love it. Titan Stature. Giant Instinct Barbarians, when they use the ability to make themselves large, now become huge, meaning you take up a 3x3 square on the battlefield and have 10 feet of reach. Fantastic feat. Unbalancing Sweep is phenomenal. For 3 actions, you choose 3 adjacent enemies, and you choose to either shove all of them or trip all of them. You make an athletics check against each one individually, and they all count towards your multiple attack penalty, but the multiple attack penalty doesn't apply until after they're all done. So this is just 3 athletics checks, all at full bonus. If you and your fighter are standing next to these enemies, you can trip all of them, and then if any of them stand up, that's a reactive strike, because that's a move action. fantastic feat to set you and your allies up for some great responses, and just to slow enemies down or push them away. At level 14, we have Awesome Blow, which is a really cool upgrade to Knockback. Knockback, if you remember, is landing a strike and then you spend an extra action to just automatically push them back 5 feet. Really cool. Now when you do that, you just get to make a normal athletics check, not with the attack trait, so it's your full athletics bonus, against the target's fortitude DC. If you succeed, the shove goes through and they suffer a successful trip check. If you critically succeed, you crit shove them back 10 feet and crit trip them so they fall prone and take damage. And if you fail, you still get the normal effect of knockback. This is great. This just gives knockback a chance to knock enemies prone as well as pushing them away. Another great way to set yourself up for a reactive strike should you be aiming for that. Great stuff. Giant's Lunge is absolutely crazy, but it doesn't sound crazy until you get to the final line. So let's go through this word for word. For one action, you extend your body and prepare to attack foes outside your normal reach. Until your rage ends, all your melee weapons and unarmed attacks gain a reach of 10 feet. This doesn't increase the reach of any weapon or unarmed strike that already has the reach trait. But it does combine with abilities that increase your reach due to increased size, such as Giant's Stature. So I would like to just tell you now that if on your first turn as a Giant Instinct Barbarian, you Rage, use Titan Stature, and Giant Lunge, then for the next 10 rounds, you have 20 feet of reach, which as a reminder, lets you attack creatures up to 25 feet away with melee strikes. Gonna let that sink in. Impaling Thrust is interesting and almost gives hint toward a dual-wielding barbarian of some kind. For 2 actions, you make a strike with a piercing damage weapon. If you successfully hit, the target is grabbed, and it doesn't wear off at the end of your next turn. In fact, they are grabbed until either they escape successfully, or you attack with that weapon again, or if you let go of the weapon for some reason. What this means is you can have an interesting build of a barbarian with 2 weapons that don't have the agile trait, so you still get your rage bonus, and you just stick them with a spear with reach, and they're now permanently grabbed unless they make a successful escape check against your athletics DC. Which, by the way, you're level 14. In 1 level, you could become legendary with athletics, which if you've got a +5 to strength, what would that be? That would be a DC 37 escape check, assuming you don't get bonuses to athletics from anything else. So if you're fighting something like a spellcaster who doesn't have good athletics or acrobatics to escape with, you just... they're stuck. And with your other weapon, you just bonk them on the head over and over again, and they can't leave. And because they're grabbed, they're permanently off guard, reducing armor class by 2 against all attacks, including ranged and spell attacks, triggering rogue sneak attacks. This is insane! Good feat. Great feat, Paizo. Love this. If this was in the original game, I don't remember it. This is fantastic. Sunder Enchantment is a direct upgrade to the Superstition Instinct Sunder spell. Now, when you attack a creature, you can instead specifically target a magic item they have on their person, or just attack a magic item in general if it's unattended. And if you successfully hit, then you can attempt to counteract the item's effect. If you succeed, it shuts the item off for 10 minutes. So let's just paint a picture. Let's say there's a magic item that grants the wielder 5 resistance to all damage types. It's not necessarily an artifact or crazy powerful magic item like this does specify. It's just a really good magic item. You can attack them with Sunder's spell, and if it hits, counteract it and turn that off for 10 minutes. I love this. Why does the Superstition Barbarian take 12 levels to get cool? Vengeful Strike at level 14 finally makes Come and Get Me worth it. Come and Get Me was the one at level 10, where you spend an action to make yourself easier to hit. Now, if a creature hits you after using Come and Get Me, you can attack them back as a reaction. But what makes this so tasty is that if you critically succeed your strike against them, it doesn't spend your reaction. So if they attack again and hit you, you get to attack them back again. And because it's still a reaction, it doesn't use your multiple attack penalty. Meaning if you can get enough critical strikes with this, you can get so many attacks at no penalty every single round. This is one of those weird cases, and it's why I don't like feat trees and like feat requirements like this. But effectively, you don't want Come and Get Me until you're level 14. Once you're level 14, you'll take whatever feat, or I guess at level 13, you'll take a week of downtime if you can find it, and train out of something and train into Come and Get Me, so that when you hit level 14, you can take this and unlock that insane ability. Really good feat. Just sucks that Come and Get Me doesn't do anything that great until this level. Of course, if you do just want a bunch of attacks every round, all at your max bonus, just take Whirlwind Strike. 3 actions. Attack every single adjacent target next to you. Your multiple attack penalty doesn't apply to any of them. That's it. If you've got 7 targets around you, you get to make 7 melee attacks, all at no penalty. And by the way, it says within your melee reach. Giant Instinct, Titan Stature, Giant Lunge, Whirlwind Strike. You attack every single enemy within 25 feet of you, all at your max attack bonus. This could let you make 10, even 15 full bonus attacks. They're all melee attacks, so they're all applying your rage damage and your Giant Instinct. Sure, you have to spend 1 full turn setting up your Giant Instinct Rage and Giant Stature and Giant's Lunge, but then you still get to attack once that turn with your Mighty Rage bonus, and then every turn going forward, you can just attack everybody within 25 feet of you. That includes verticality. If it's 20 feet above you, it still gets hit by Whirlwind Strike. I don't think I'm overreacting when I say Giant Instinct Whirlwind Strike might be one of the single strongest things in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Collateral Thrash at level 16 is a hilarious upgrade to the Thrash feat. Now, instead of just dealing damage to the target you're throttling, you can instead bash them into a nearby friend of theirs. The creature you bash them into also takes the Thrash damage with a reflex save instead of a fortitude save. It's just really, really funny. Again, it's not going to be that much damage, but it's not going to be low damage, and this basically doubles the damage of Thrash. Honestly, no, that's a lot of damage, because remember, you can still thrash 3 times in 1 turn. So you can thrash them into their buddy 3 times. Desperate Wrath is a really fun all-or-nothing feat. If your turn begins and you have less than half your maximum hit points remaining, then as a free action, you can gain the following benefits. +2 circumstance bonus to all attack rolls. Circumstance, not status, which circumstance bonuses to attack rolls are super rare. But you do take -1 circumstance penalty to armor class and all saving throws, making you an easier target. These last until your rage ends, or if you ever get healed above half your health. I love this. This turns your barbarian into a fighter. You have to be low on health, and you become really, really vulnerable. But you get the same accuracy as a fighter, which is gross. Couple this with a +1 status bonus from something like a bard and off guard. Maybe you're flanking with somebody, and all of a sudden, you are so accurate. You're very likely going to critically hit as a barbarian. And as a reminder, in Pathfinder 2e, all damage is doubled on a crit, including weapon specialization, including rage damage. Love this. Dragon Transformation. Once per 10 minutes, the Dragon Instinct Barbarian, for a single action, can just cast a 6th rank dragon form. Straight up. Just the spell. What's cool about this, though, is you get to keep your own armor class and attack modifier, which is likely going to be way higher than a 6th rank spell. So you're getting all the benefits of being a dragon without the drawbacks of relying on the spell's statistics. You also get to still apply your rage damage to all of your attacks in dragon form, and your dragon breath uses your class DC, which once again will probably be way higher than whatever the dragon form uses. Also, dragon form grants you temporary hit points, and unlike every other time in Pathfinder 2e, these temp hit points stack with your rage temporary hit points, meaning you're going to have a huge buffer of hit points to work through before you even start losing health. This is great. Also, it says that these stack with any temporary hit points gained from any rage action, meaning that renewed vigor, at level 16, granting you 20 temporary hit points every single turn, that's gonna stack. Crazy. Also, randomly at level 18, you get a plus 20-foot bonus to your speed in dragon form. Your dragon strikes all deal 12 bonus damage, and Dragon Breath just gets a flat plus 14 to damage on an area effect. This is the same kind of bonus amazing power that Whirlwind Strike has, where you can, in a very rare case, apply a huge flat damage amount to an area effect. That's a 30-foot cone. If you catch 6 targets in it, not only is your Dragon Breath dealing 16d6, but it also gets a flat plus 14 to every target. Level 16, we finally get another unique feat for the Fury Instinct Barbarian. And it's still sad. As a reaction, if you get critically hit by a creature within your melee range, you can attack them. Or you could just take Come and Get Me, and the feat that just lets you attack anybody who hits you. And with that feat, if you critically hit, you get more of them. This always uses your reaction. And it has to be a critical strike from the enemy. Paizo, why? I was so excited for the remaster, for the Fury Instinct Barbarian, because nobody uses it. Nobody plays it because it's just worse than every other instinct. I don't get it. Paizo, why? Penetrating Projectile is so freaking cool. For 2 actions, as long as you are using a ranged or thrown weapon that deals piercing damage, you just hurl it in a 30-foot line, and you attack every single creature in that line, all at your max attack bonus. It's Whirlwind Strike, but it's in a huge 30-foot line. I love that. Just if you have like a throwing spear and you just chuck it through like 6 enemies and it blasts through them all. The visuals, the mechanics, that is... God, Paizo, you may have missed with the Fury Instinct, but you nailed it with the thrown weapons in this one. You only roll the damage once and apply it to every single creature it hits, and these creatures get no bonus cover from being behind another creature. Oftentimes, creatures will get like a +1 lesser cover bonus to their armor class from being directly behind something else. This ignores it because it's just blasting through them. Shattering Blows really sucks. Like, really sucks. While you're raging, you get to ignore 5 hardness with all of your melee strikes. That sounds amazing, right? Constructs constantly have hardness against melee physical damage. That's brutal. This will just give you 5 bonus damage against constructs, right? Well, no. Because constructs are not objects. And Shattering Blows only works on objects. Who cares about ignoring 5 hardness on an object when you're dealing like 3d12 plus 20? I seriously don't see where this is useful. It's only objects, but you're dealing so much damage that ignoring 5 is not really gonna matter. If this said, ignore the hardness of objects, that would be really cool. Maybe there'd need to be a caveat so you can't ignore like adamantium, but ignoring 5 hardness as a level 16 feat? If that was a level 2 feat, I'd be like, yo, that's awesome. My level 2 barbarian can like punch through a door. It ignores like the 5 or 10 hardness of a door. I love that. Why is this level 16? I don't know anybody who's gonna take this feat. And the only way it gets better at level 19 when you get Devastator. And then you ignore 10 hardness. See, a feat like this would be useful on something like a Flurry Ranger. A character who attacks like 5 times per turn would be great, because then you ignore that hardness every time you attack. Barbarians, especially in the remaster, are pretty much built to hit a single target only 1 time per turn. Maybe they'll hit multiple different targets one time with like Whirlwind Strike or Penetrating Throw. But this is really lackluster. I'm going to stop complaining about it because I'm just repeating myself, but wow. Brutal Critical is underwhelming for a level 18 feat. All of your critical strikes deal 1 additional damage die, so if you're using a d12 weapon, an extra d12 isn't nothing, and they do take 2 damage dice worth of persistent bleed damage. That's where this really shines, is You're rolling d12s? Congratulations, you just inflicted 2d12 persistent bleed damage. So you can look at this as your critical hits deal 3d12 bonus damage, which is good, don't get me wrong, but it is a level 18 feat. I think I would have preferred this as a feat that you get at low levels, and maybe like at level 6, it deals 1 damage die of bleed, and then at level 12, it deals 2. And then at level 18, it deals 3. That'd be fun scaling where you can get it early and it gets better over time. The fact that you just have to take this as a level 18 feat, it doesn't feel great. Especially when you've got something like Perfect Clarity. As a reaction while raging, if you would critically fail a saving throw or attack roll, you can immediately re-roll it with a +2 circumstance bonus. Once again, that's a circumstance bonus to attack rolls. It's actually kind of funny that it says take the better result. Like, yeah, we just critically failed. There is no worse result. The downside of this is you do immediately stop raging, but you are level 18, meaning I think you have the class feature that says as long as you spend 1 turn not raging, you can rage again and get your temporary hit points back, so it's not a big deal. This is just great to have in the back pocket. You're gonna roll a nat 1 eventually, and every time you rage, this gives you the opportunity to re-roll critical failed attacks and saving throws. That's not to be underestimated. Vicious Evisceration is so brutal, I love it. For 2 actions, make a melee strike. If you hit, the target is drained 1. If you crit, they're drained 2. As a reminder, drained is one of the scariest conditions in the game. Not only does it reduce all of your fortitude saves by an amount equal to its value, but it also reduces your current and max health by your level times its value. So if you critically hit with Vicious Evisceration against a level 20 creature, on top of your own doubled massive chunk of damage, they're getting drained too, reducing their health by another 40. You can look at that as 40 bonus damage. You can really look at this as 2 action, make an attack. If it hits, deal 20 bonus damage, or deal damage to a creature equal to its level. The thing that keeps this balanced is that drained, like any condition, only applies its greatest value. So you can't just keep applying drained 1. It's not additive. But using this on a big boss will seriously speed it up early in the fight. And if they can ever get rid of the condition somehow, it doesn't restore the health they're currently lost. So you can just apply it again and reduce their current health again. It's actually bad for the opponent if they get rid of drained, because it's so easy for you to apply again. Phenomenal. Whirlwind Toss is a 3-action upgrade to Thrash again. Unfortunately, this does mean that this is a 3-feet tree, which I'm not a fan of, but I do love Thrash. You take your creature that you're thrashing and hit every nearby creature with it. So, you thrash, thrashing the target. Then, you thrash, causing the collateral thrash to hit every single creature around you for your thrash damage, all of them getting a basic reflex save. And then at the end of this, if you want to, you can throw them 10 feet. This is really not bad. Thrash deals really good damage, and doing that to up to like 4 or 5 enemies around you can really stack up some reliable damage. Alright, it's the level 20 feats, the feats that nobody will ever actually get to use, but we love to theorycraft with them anyway. Let's start with Annihilating Swing. Let's start with this first paragraph where it's already off to the races. For 2 actions, you make a melee strike that ignores resistances. Straight up. It doesn't ignore immunities, but it does ignore any and all resistance. Something could have damage resistance 3000 to physical, and you can still hit it with Annihilating Swing, as long as it doesn't say immune. Now, if you target an object with this, and that object has a hardness of 20 or less, you destroy it. Straight up. Objects have a really low armor class, so it's really easy to target them, and you don't even need to make an attack roll to hit them most of the time, because you can't miss. So if you target an unattended object with 20 hardness or less, it is destroyed. Now, if the object is enchanted in any way, you do also have to make a counteract check. But your counteract check is counted as a rank 10 counteract check, and it uses the result of your attack roll on the target, and if you successfully counteract it, you destroy it. Unfortunately, even at level 20, if the object is an artifact or has a hardness greater than 20, it does not get destroyed. Also, if you want to, you can just destroy the ground. Every time you use this, you can just target a surface and destroy a 5-foot cube. You can play Minecraft in Pathfinder. Contagious Rage. This is an upgrade to Share Rage. And now, you can still only share Rage with one ally at a time, but you can use it any number of times. But what makes this really special is that allies who share your Rage now gain your entire instinct ability, whether it's shape-shifting into an animal, bonus elemental damage, or even massive flat damage from Giant Instinct. It also gains the second max damage bonus, so for example, Giant Instinct, all of your allies now deal 10 bonus damage with all of their melee strikes. This isn't that crazy broken because it's only really going to benefit your melee attacking allies. So if you have like a fighter and a monk that doesn't use agile weapons, this is really good. Overall, it's fine. Being able to give your fighter flat plus 10 damage ain't bad. Like, seriously, don't underestimate that. But for level 20 feet, it's cool. It's a lot cooler than it is viable. Quaking Stomp. For one action every 10 minutes, you can cast Earthquake. Don't get excited. Earthquake sucks in Pathfinder 2. Seriously, in Pathfinder, all this does is inflict a penalty to armor class to creatures standing on the terrain, opens up some fissures that are a DC 15 to climb out of, and then if there were structures in the earthquake area, the structures come down and deal 11d6. It's not bad, but you need to have a structure to destroy. Otherwise, you're just inflicting a penalty to armor class. It also applies to attack rolls, I suppose, which isn't bad, but I don't know. Earthquake is a big letdown in Pathfinder, in my opinion. You hear Earthquake, you think this massive, shaking, damaging effect, when in reality, it's weirdly just a big debuff. And it debuffs your allies, too. It's anybody on the ground, so, And finally, Unstoppable Juggernaut doesn't feel that unstoppable. You gain resistance equal to 3 plus Constitution modifier to all damage. At level 20, that's probably plus 6. 9 resistance to all damage isn't terrible, but remember, you're level 20. You're probably fighting like level 23 creatures, which are hitting you possibly for triple digits at this point if they critically hit you. Even if they don't, they're probably hitting for high 60s to 80s. Reducing that by 9? If this was worded as level 20 feet, reduce all damage taken by 10%, that wouldn't sound quite as impressive. It does upgrade your raging resistance by 5, so you get like resistance 13 against a couple specific damage types. The big thing, I guess, is you get what I lovingly call the boar power, where if you would be dropped to 0 hit points, you can just stay at 1 instead. But this does end your rage and immediately makes you wounded 2. Can we talk about the fact that this level 20 class feat is a level 1 orc feat? But that's the Barbarian. What a wild swinging class that kind of reflects the class as a whole. It either hits things out of the park with some of the strongest feats I've ever read, or it just whiffs and misses entirely and just kind of falls flat on its face. There's not a whole lot of in between here. There's a couple feats that fall right in the middle, but there's definitely some clear winners for which feats are better than others. But let me hear from y'all in the comments what you think of the new Barbarian, and if you cracked open Player Core 2, how you feel about all the changes. Strap in. I'm going to be rocket launching class guides at y'all. If you don't want to miss them, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the members of the No Nat One's Patreon. If you would like to support them and get your... Support them. I'm so tired. If you'd like to support me and get your name on this list with all these generous people, there's a link in the description where you can pledge for $10 a month. Thank you all so very much, sincerely. I'm so excited to get into more of Player Core 2, and I hope you're as excited as I am. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, No Nat Ones.